Hi, it's Lee, and today I'm colouring the cover art from Anna's latest book, Journey to the Sunny Land. And if you are a fan of her art, she has another book coming very soon. Now, as soon as I saw this picture, I had a whole vision of what I wanted it to look like. Basically, a foggy sort of black scene with white outlines and lots of gold. So dutifully I got started with my picture. I used chalk pastels. Probably should have had a practice first, because instead of the vision that I had imagined, I just ended up with a hot mess. My second attempt, I thought that maybe the chalks were a mistake, so I was concerned about covering the whole area and felt that if I did it in pencil that my wrist would hurt so much. So I decided on my Inktense pans, and because of that I could cover a wider area. Now, I was still using the same page, by the way, just the other side. And so I figured I could just always go back over the page and fix it up later. Anyway, my thought was there, but my execution was again bad, and the page looked like a disaster. That's when I thanked my lucky stars that the book comes with two of the images included, so I hadn't lost the opportunity to colour the cover art again. So this time I took the page down to my local copy shop and I got it copied, 2 pictures to a page, on my Nina cardstock. So in case I messed up yet again, then I would still have a spare. So in case you're wondering why the image looks small, it's now A5 size, and I'm hopeful that this time I will get my dream of an icy looking scene with gold highlights. So looking at the little girl in the picture, I decided to colour her hair blonde, and that got me thinking about the stereotypical blonde, the cheerleader, which got me thinking about today's case, which takes us to Green Bay in Wisconsin. It was September in 2008 when Jamie Brown enrolled at Ashwaubenon High School. Now, Jamie was excited to be going to her new school, making new friends, enjoying school life, and the latest fashions. It was something that she was really looking forward to. Now, many 15-year-olds might be a bit anxious about starting a new school in a new city, but not Jamie. She was excited. This was a dream come true. Now, the petite girl with the dirty blonde hair had gone to the mall the day before to make sure she'd got the right gear to look good for this new exciting chapter. She'd got a new Esprit bag decorated with hearts, some Levi jeans. They were just some of the purchases she made that day. And she spent time doing her hair and just, really making herself look good for school. So on enrolment, she enrolled at school by herself. She advised that her mother is rarely available due to her work. And with the enrolment complete, she made sure to ask if there are any cheerleading tryouts that Jamie could apply for soon. It was her long-held hope to be a cheerleader. Now, the school actually had 2 types of cheer squads, one that was dance-based but really involved a lot of gymnastics, and a less intense cheer squad without the use of gymnastics, and that was the one that Jamie wanted, as she would struggle to do a cartwheel. Now, as luck would have it, Jamie didn't need to wait long before she could try out for the cheer squad for the Jaguars. Now, the tryouts were before the start of the next school semester, and so she was there for the tryouts with bells on, and more importantly, waiting for pom-poms. But meeting up with her new classmates, she was really relieved to hear that it should be easy enough to achieve her dream of getting on this cheer squad. And to her relief, there were no strenuous gymnastics required to don the pom-poms. You just had to learn some chants and claps that the current cheer squad actually taught the ones trying out, and they were just used to basically rally up a crowd. It wasn't like a big entertainment thing that you see in other cheer squads. So once the tryout was completed, it was just a matter of sitting back and seeing if you made the squad. Now, the cheer squad later invited the girls to a pool party at her home, and Jamie found that she had a common class schedule with some of the girls, and it seems that new friendships were really quickly formed. She may have felt a little bit self-conscious though at the pool party. A lot of girls were commenting that she was wearing a t-shirt over her one-piece swimsuit rather than a incy-wincy teeny tiny bikini like the rest of the squad. Now, the girls at this school didn't seem to be the real judgy mean girl type, and only one girl sort of commented on the swimwear choice, and she was quickly defended by the others. So she explained that she'd actually had some recent weight loss, and that had left her feeling really self-conscious. And once she explained that, the girls were all fine and there was no trouble. Jamie would recall years later that this was one of the happiest days that she'd had in years. The girls ended up playing games, they danced to music, and eventually they started to practice those cheers that they'd learnt at the tryouts for the upcoming Jaguars game, hoping against hope that they would be chosen for the squad. Now, a few days later, after the pool party, Jamie received a phone call at home telling her that she had made the squad. The next day, school started, and she was excited to have the same homeroom as some of the members of her cheer group. Classes were a bit of a blur though, and although she was there, the teacher had to call her name several times before she responded to it. It was all pretty understandable though. The teachers understood, new school, new friends, and finally that long-held ambition of being on the cheer squad. It was natural enough to zone out during class. As well as making the cheer squad, she also made the senior choir, with the teacher being very impressed with her mature singing voice. And academically, Jamie was ahead of her class as well and able to do higher level work. Everything was working out for Jamie. It seems that she was well on track to graduate high school and academically do well and the activities that she wanted to do. I'm guessing these successes were important to Jamie, but the one that was really important was the cheer squad. And she was soon trying on that green uniform with the white piping and the gold embellishments after school and practicing her pom-pom work. The outfit cost over $100 and she promptly paid for it with a check. It was a pretty exciting start to a new school, and Jamie didn't seem to have any trouble fitting in. No one had made fun of her speech impediment. She pronounced R's like W's, so rabbit was wabbit. In between her own successes, she was also able to empathise with other students that were alone and in the cafeteria, and she encouraged them to be themselves. She knew what it was like to be bullied, as she'd been bullied in her last school, and it was all going so well. But for some reason, Jamie just didn't show up again to classes. Now, the school semester was well underway and the principal was really on the ball. Every week he got a list of absentee students, and on that truancy list he was surprised to find a new transfer student on it already. This was really unusual. Usually a student wouldn't jig off school after just one day. The principal was very proactive and he immediately contacted the police liaison office, who went straight to Jamie's home. No one answered. Now, most people would have just left it there or maybe tried again later, but the principal and the liaison office were tenacious. They went back to the enrolment application form and decided to give the school in Nevada that Jamie had transferred from a call. Now, maybe they would know some details of how they could contact this student. And then that's when things took a real twist. Jamie wasn't absent from school at all. According to the Nevada school, she was in class in Nevada and hadn't been absent at all. This just didn't make sense. Had Jamie moved, enrolled in the new school, attended tryouts for the cheer squad, been accepted in the choir, started classes for just one day, and then returned to Nevada without a word to anyone? Or was there something else going on? The Nevada school advised that Jamie lived with her grandmother, so the principal's next call was to the grandmother's home. Now, she would obviously know if her granddaughter had enrolled in another school in another state, only to return again. Now, the grandmother confirmed that Jamie hadn't left the state. She was living with her and attending classes as normal at her Nevada high school. So it seemed like a mystery. But then the grandmother told the principal something else. She said that her own daughter, Jamie's mother, whose name was Wendy, actually had a history of identity theft crimes. Could a mother impersonate their own daughter? Well, it turns out Wendy was only 33, being a teen mum herself, and with her petite build and clear skin, it seems that she could pass herself off as a 15-year-old girl. Although some people do recall that she looked a little bit older, it wasn't enough to raise any red flags. Wendy, who was married at the time, was pretty easy to find. She was actually in jail. She'd been arrested for impersonating not her daughter, but impersonating the building manager of the apartment complex where she lived. And she'd actually accepted payment of rent from a prospective tenant of $700 odd as the building manager. Now, that check also that she'd used to pay the cheerleading uniform, that had bounced as well, and that would be added to the charges that the police would ultimately bring against her. Now, this wasn't Wendy's first stint in jail either. She'd actually served prison time in 2002 for burglary, and 2 years later in 2004 for obstructing justice. And some of her crimes were ridiculously small, like a bad check to Dairy Queen for $13. I guess when you've got a craving for ice cream, you've really got a craving. Now, Wendy confessed to impersonating her daughter Jamie quite quickly. Her dream of being a cheerleader was over, and she now had to face the reality that her wish, wanting to get to her high school degree and be a cheerleader because she had no childhood, would never happen. She made her first court appearance that Friday by video conference, and the judge set her a bond of $8,000. If convicted, she could face anywhere between 6 and 13 years in prison and a $10,000 fine, depending on how many charges were laid against her. Now, I guess many of us want to do a do-over for high school, and it can be a time when people seem to really obviously mature at different paces, and where cliques and divides are so much more noticeable than in the early years. But for Wendy, she wasn't really popular like her younger sister Jennifer. Her speech impediment and her timid manner, it just made her a target for bullies. And it's reported that her relationship with her mother was also adversarial as well. It just wasn't good for her mental health. And although she excelled at track work and running, she just didn't fit in at high school. And it seems that Wendy never learnt the most important lesson of high school. It doesn't last forever. And when you look back, it's just a few short years before it's all over. For Wendy, though, she wouldn't get the opportunity to finish high school. Her lack of knowledge about sex education led to her realising she was pregnant and leaving school afterwards. The father of the child didn't want anything to do with her or the child, and quickly spread the news around the school that she was pregnant. So before even receiving that high school diploma, she'd left school, and at 17, she gave birth to her first child, her son, Joey, and just a few months later, she was pregnant by a new boyfriend with her daughter, Jamie. Now, this was followed by a series of unskilled jobs, being a single mum, and moving around the country, and time spent in jail. In 2006, she married her husband, but later that year, she was already back in prison for a parole violation, and the marriage wasn't a happily ever after kind either. The couple seemed to have a toxic relationship, with allegations of abuse and a life that was pretty unstable for those two children, Joey and Jamie. Her husband filed for divorce multiple times, but each time ended up withdrawing the application. Neighbours, though, they said they felt sorry for Wendy. She was softly spoken. She kept a nice home, even though there were quite a few cats, sometimes 9 at a time. But the couple ended up leaving this home with unpaid rent and then moving once again. It seems that Wendy's adult life was just a series of moves and unskilled jobs to different counties, different states. And it was at this time in 2008 that the decision was made for Wendy's children, Joey and Jamie, to return to Nevada and live with their grandmother to get a stable family life. Now, it seems an odd move, as Wendy had said that her relationship was abusive with her mother, but it seems that it was the best place for the children to grow up in a stable environment without being chopped and changed and moved around all the time. Now, Wendy was at a low point by now, and to her it seemed that when she seen the high school looking out of her apartment window, that this was the answer to her problems. This is where everything went wrong. If only she could have graduated, if only she could have been a cheerleader like her sister. Well, why not? So she experimented with her hair, she modulated her voice so that she sounded like a high-pitched teen and squealed. And she even got a new wardrobe, new clothes, so that she'd be able to pull off the look of a high school girl. And the clothes also helped to hide those stretch marks from giving birth. And the different voices, she could pretend to be both Jamie and Jamie's hard-working mother, just in case the school might telephone the home, which they did the time when they notified her that she had been accepted to the cheer squad. Now, Wendy was assessed by a court-appointed psychiatrist to see if she was fit to stand trial. And the psychiatrist found that she actually suffered from bipolar disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and 2 personality disorders. Now, both the defence and the prosecution were actually in agreement on how this case should go. They both agreed that prison just actually wouldn't be helpful for Wendy, that she actually needed psychiatric care, and they both agreed on that. In the end, she was found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect to the charge of identity theft, and she was ultimately committed to the Winnebago Mental Health Facility in Wisconsin for 3 years. Now, the news headlines of her impersonation were everywhere, and I guess to Wendy it might have even seemed like once more she was being bullied, but on a wider scale, and more like a joke to the world. She later told The Atlantic that she just wanted to get in a hole and die. It was that devastating for her. But in a roundabout way, this sentence would actually help Wendy achieve some of her goals, as well as get the help that she needed. While she was waiting transfer to the mental health facility, she didn't let her time sitting in jail go to waste. She actually decided to study for her GED course behind bars and without the advantage of face-to-face teaching. And 6 weeks after her arrest, she took the test, and while she was still in jail, she received the news that would make her cry. She had passed. So Wendy served her time in the mental health facility for 3 years. During that time, she ultimately separated from her husband and had a pretty long and gruesome battle with breast cancer, which she ultimately survived as well. And although she had obtained her high school diploma, it was only after her release that she would collect the certificate. So in 2013, she walked the stage, watched by her proud father, and collected the certificate in her hat and gown. And her father even had a graduation gift for her, a coffee maker, and he told The Atlantic it was something that he'd always wanted to see happen. Makes you feel good, right? Your kid finally made it. Finally got their diploma, finally graduated. But was it all worth it? Wendy told The Atlantic that her daughter, Jamie, now a mother herself, had no contact with her. And although she hopes that will change in the future, it would be up to Jamie to instigate that. Wendy and Jamie's story has been the subject of headlines around the world, and so much so that, of course, there was naturally going to be a Lifetime movie, and it was called Identity Theft of a Cheerleader. I haven't seen it because the reviews that I read about it were only very loosely based on the facts, so I didn't think it was worth trying to dig it out and find it to watch. But what really gets me is that everyone always focuses on Wendy in this story, because I guess her story is just so bizarre. Like, who would want to go back to high school and go to this much effort to go to high school? But I can't help feeling how Jamie must have felt then and now that her own mother took the opportunity to steal not her clothes or money that we often hear parents doing, but her whole identity. I mean, what would have happened if Jamie hadn't been caught so quickly? What would have happened if Wendy, Jamie had started relationships? What would have happened with those 2 lots of school transcripts if one or both of them wanted to go on to further education? Like, I just can't believe how anyone wouldn't have thought through the consequences of this and how it would affect their daughter. Like, it's just bizarre. But saying that, I really do think that the court made the right decision. Clearly, Wendy has mental health issues, and hopefully, with all the hard work in the mental health facility, that she has learnt some coping mechanisms and some ways of dealing with her own challenges. But I really hope that Jamie has been able to move on and go on with her life and be the best mother that she can to her children. Now, I didn't read anything about Wendy's other child, Joey, so I hope that everything is going well for him as well. But I would love to know your thoughts on this case, but I'd like to know, would you go back to high school? There is no way that I would pass for 15, by the way, so that's a no from me. But maybe when I was in my 30s, which Wendy was then, I might have been able to pass for 18 or so, but I think I would have needed way too much makeup. But I certainly wouldn't pass for the age. But I mean, would you really want to go back to high school? Because I always think the best thing about high school was it was only just a small part of your life, and the rest of your life is so much more than high school. But I'd love to know what you think. So that's it from me. Until next time, stay safe and happy colouring.